We've got round 15 of the 2023 Hagerty Radical Cup UK coming up for you here under grey skies at Silverstone on the full Grand Prix circuit. One of the supporting races has just concluded, and that saw the weather change from dry to damp to wet and almost back to dry within what was a 25-minute race. Well, this is a 30-minute race, and therefore all of the teams, I'm sure, will have been looking towards the skies. A 90% chance of rain, but you can see it's still quite blustery here. So when it comes in, it very quickly blows its way past the circuit. So we'll have to wait and see what the teams decide to do. Remember, it's the third and final race, which means it is a pit stop race as well. Pit stop window opens between the 8th and the 18th minute of the race. So let's guide you through the grid then and the way that they line up for what is a very full grid of cars. We've seen James Lay be the man to beat so far this weekend. And where does he start based on the fastest lap times that were set earlier on today in the race? It's James Lay that will start from pole position. So he lines up on the front row of the grid with Ben Casely alongside him. John McLeod and Chris Preen sit there on row number 2. Row 3 of the grid is Peter Tyler and Jack Tomerlin. And row 4 sees Hector Hurst line up alongside Alim Geshev. Jason Rishover is next up on the inside of row number 5 with Mark Williams, twice a podium visitor this weekend for the first time this season. Alongside him on row number 5, and it's Andy Lowe and Yajic Shalonka that sit there on the 6th row of the grid. Hayden Chance and Austin Riley, the Canadian, are there on row number 7 with Aimo Faisalim and Dan Headlam sitting there on row number 8. And then row 9, it's Rob Greenwood alongside Sylvain Guttoli. The next row of the grid is row number 10. Jack Yang has for company Wesley Fongedy, and then John Davis will be the last of the Radical SR3s that we have in the field. So in reality, the number 33 car of James Pinkerton is on pole position for the SR1s, which will go off about 20 seconds after the SR3s get underway. So the SR3s go off with the lights, the SR1s go off with the drop of the Union flag. Shane Stoney and George Nutten are the next 2 cars up for the SR1s on what is the 12th row of the grid. In row 13 of the grid, it's Tom Wood and James Ockenden. Then it's Jack Leese, who has Ashley Gaunt for company on row number 14, with row 15 being comprised on the inside by Oscar Joyce, and alongside him it's Christian Brooks. Sven Thompson and Darren Nutten line up on row number 16, with row number 17 being comprised by Michael Williams and Bradley Gaunt. And the final row of the grid is the championship leader, Theo Mercouris, who had problems earlier on and didn't set a half-decent lap time, so he's got work to do in the 74 car. He has got Jose Carvalho lining up alongside, and those are the 36 cars that we have on the grid. You can still see the dark skies. You might just be able to see that the safety car has its windscreen wipers on as well, which suggests that there's still moisture out there. But what we have seen over the course of today is that the track might be dry in some places, it might be substantively wetter in others, because that's a typical motorsport microclimate that you get at Silverstone. Now, are they going for a second formation lap? Yes, they are. I thought they might, because it has clearly been deemed that for the drivers to go out there and just do a single formation lap would not be safe enough. So because they're not used to these conditions, they'll do 2. But it may well be the clock starts to tick when they start this second formation lap, which they are about to do any second now. So as they go over the start-finish line, does the clock start to tick? No, it doesn't at the moment. So it looks as though we are going to have 2 formation laps and a full 30-minute race, which is good. So we've given you the grid. James Lay, who claimed the win earlier on, having claimed also a win in yesterday's race, is now 8 times a race winner so far this year at the wheel of the number 1 car. He is the reigning champion. He has also moved into the championship lead over the course of this weekend, because the championship leader, Darrell de Leon, is now racing in the British Touring Car Championship, which is up at Croft this weekend. And Penn Casely, who was 3rd in the championship, is a driver who had a retirement in the first of the races, so he has lost ground arguably to a driver he was hoping to close up on this weekend. So puts James Lay so far, still with this race to go and anything could happen, in a comfortable position. Now, because this is the 3rd event, it does feature a mandatory pit stop. So at 8 minutes, a pit window open warning sign is displayed. Drivers may only enter the pit lane after they pass the board. So when that board is out, you can't just come in, you have to pass the board on trackside. And then when the race time has reached 18 minutes, a pit window closed warning sign is displayed to indicate the end of the pit window. Now, drivers are allowed to enter the pit lane after the pit closed board has been shown, providing they don't pass that trackside. So after the 18th minute, the board is displayed, and if you haven't pitted, You can still come into the pits, but what you can't do is pass that board and come in the lap after. Then you would be outside of the window, and that is the way it works. The minimum pit stop time to pit in to pit out is 45 seconds, plus any success seconds that are awarded. And we look back at the previous pit stop race for that, which was back at Holton Park, so an extra 20 seconds for the winner in each of the categories from the wins at Holton Park. 15 seconds if you were second, 10 seconds if you're third, and it's extra 5 seconds for the cars that were in fourth and fifth respectively. So all of those get added together, put onto the 45 seconds, and that does mean that we do end up with a mixture of drivers in the pit stop races that ultimately claim wins. So lots of weaving being done to try and keep some temperature going. Has Peter Tyler got a problem, because he seems to be pulling off to the left-hand side of the circuit in the white and Dayglow car and seems to have very little motive power at the moment. He's crawling along, and I think he's going to come to a halt just at the end of the Lewis Hamilton straight, so outside the wing, and that is in the worst possible position. No disrespect to Peter, but that's the worst possible position for the marshals to get to him. So they are on the opposite side of the track, and where do you push that car to? You can't really push it to the outside of Abbey because there's not a great deal of room. You almost have to push it back towards pit lane exit and then shove it down the pit lane exit road. So I think we might have a subtly delayed start possibly for this one. You can see again weather conditions are closing in. Right, so some parts of the circuit looking dry, other parts of the circuit looking wetter than an otter's pocket at the moment. And certainly our camera on the stand there, which is picking up the action from that part of the circuit. Look at the difference. Look, this part of the circuit looks bone dry, and that's only a corner further down that is absolutely sopping wet. Some of it is the way that the camera is facing the way that the wind and the rain is coming in, and therefore some cameras are slightly less protected than others. But this part of the circuit looks bone dry. You would never know there was any rain. Yes, the clouds look dark, very similar colour to the tarmac, but what a difference it makes. So are we going to get the race underway this time through? The rain is starting to fall on the start-finish line, so anybody that's chosen slicks is going to have an interesting couple of races. The clock is ticking now. We are going for another formation lap. Well, in reality, what we've got is it's going to be a safety car start, and we've got a safety car out there as the race starts because of that stricken car of Peter Tyler, which is being pushed out of the way by our fantastic Silverstone marshals. Marshals.co.uk if you want to join the marshalling ranks, whether it be here at Silverstone or any race meeting, we'd be delighted to have you. Marshals.co.uk. So Peter Tyler's car pushed out of harm's way, and there should be hopefully a little gap in the barriers where they can get the car totally out of harm's way, and I would like to think they'll be able to get that done by the end of this lap potentially, so we just get the single lap behind the safety car. And then of course it means, rather than it being a 2x2 start to the race, because it's a safety car period, it'd be a single file restart in reality. And the clock now is ticking. So remember, pit window opens 8 minutes into the race. Everybody has to spend 45 minutes in the pits from pit in to pit out. It takes 24 minutes just to drive down, 24 seconds rather, to drive down the pit lane. Everybody's got to be in there for 45 seconds. I think I said minutes, 45 seconds. And then it takes 24 to drive down the pit lane. You're not going to be stationary for a great deal of time in reality. The cars that won their respective classes in the last pit stop race at Holton Park, well, Theo Mercouris will remain stationary for 65 seconds. So he's got even more work to do. That was in the SR1 category. Second in the SR1s last time out was Shane Stoney. So he'll remain stationary for, what's that going to be, 60 seconds. In the SR1s, the winner last time out was a driver that's not here, Alex Khatib. Second last time out was Ben Casely, so he's going to have to stop for 60 seconds. So the car that's alongside him, James Lay, last time out, didn't have a great run in the pit stop race, so he is on just 45 seconds. So the two cars on the front row of the grid, one will stop for 45 seconds pit in to pit out, the other will stop for 60 seconds pit in to pit out. So it does mean that Ben Casely has got even more work to do in the grey and the light blue car to try and see if he can overcome the dominance of James Lay over the course of this weekend. We did see James Lay do the treble at Donington Park at the start of the season, He also did the treble at Snetterton when the championship supported the British Touring Car Championship, so he's not averse to winning all 3 races over the course of a weekend. But in these tricky conditions, it could be critical as to what tyres they bolted on the cars when they left the paddock and went to the assembly area, and that happened probably 15-20 minutes ago now. So we are racing in reality. The lights are out on the safety car, so it is going to peel its way into the pit lane now, which means that Peter Tyler's car has been dealt with, so there's going to be a gap on what would be the 3rd row of the grid in reality, and they shouldn't be getting themselves into 2x2 order. It is a safety car restart, so it should be single file, I would have thought. So let's just have a quick look. They are, I think, they're trying to get themselves into 2x2 order, which surprises me because the race in reality has started. So if you get a safety car, it's single file, but I think the drivers are maybe not quite aware of that. And the one thing they need to be careful of then is that they don't, in reality, overtake before the control line. So here we go. It does look as though they have decided it's going to be a single file restart, and they finally get things underway. So it is James Lay that leads the charge up towards Copse Corner for the first time. Ben Casely there in 2nd place, but it's the first time they'd have circulated Silverstone in wet conditions all weekend, and of course they're on their first lap, so they are trying to work out exactly how much adhesion there is from their control Hankook, either slick or wet tyres, depending on what they've bolted on in these first few corners. Looks as though James Ockenden runs very wide coming out of Copse Corner in the SR1 charge, but for the overall lead at the moment, still James Lay from Ben Casely. And who's there in 3rd place? It's John McLeod that's there in 3rd place. Hector Hurst looking as though he's there in 4th place at the moment in the all-blue car, but he's coming under pressure from the car that's behind him, which is Jason Rishover. In fact, no, it's Chris Preen and then Jason Rishover by the look of things. So through Stowe, you can see this part of the circuit is substantially wetter than the start-finish line, but the rain is falling ever more on the start-finish line. Just how much it deteriorates, that's the big question. And then, of course, the next of the questions is what tyres has everybody gone for? Mark Williams dives up the inside of, I think, Jacek Jalonka to gain a place there. Mark Williams is the black car with the Dayglow orange livery to it. So twice a podium finisher this weekend, having not finished on the podium all season. So it's been a good weekend, really, for Mark Williams. But he's down towards the bottom of the top 10 at the moment and busy squabbling away with those around him, including Andy Lowe, by the look of things, and Hayden Chase. So we've already had 5 minutes of the race in reality, so it's only another 3 minutes before the pit window opens. Now, what do you do? Pit window opens. That would be the prime opportunity to change tyres if you think you've made the wrong choice. But then the problem is you pit at the front end of the window to change your tyres for what ought to be the right tyre at this point of the race, and conditions could change again by the back end of the race, and all of a sudden you find yourself on the wrong tyre again. But it does look as though we're now getting a bit more spray from the back of the car. So if you're on slicks, I would say pit now, front end of the window, get the team to change the tyres. It's going to cost you a longer pit stop, but at least then you're on the right tyre for these conditions. James Lowe and Ben Casely working hard at the wheel of their car. 6 minutes gone, so another couple of minutes before the pit window opens, and even then, remember, they've got to pass the board that says the pits are open. So it's going to be at least another couple of laps probably before anybody is able to head down pit road. If they do it before, they'll be outside of the window and have to serve a second pit stop. And we're side by side for the lead of the race. James Lay is all on the curbs on the exit of Copse Corner. In these conditions, that's going to unsettle the car. So Ben Casely is still alongside him, up towards Maggots and Beckett's. He's got the outside line for Maggots, the inside line for Beckett's. But James Lay is still trying to brave it out. Finally, he gets himself back ahead. So James Lay maintains the lead of the race, but not for want of trying as far as Ben Casely was concerned there. He threw everything at it, including the kitchen sink, couldn't quite unlock the door to the lead. Out of Chapel, down the hanger straight, the leading pair still together. Watch out for the white and Dayglow green car of Chris Preen in the background as Ben Casely now goes for the inside line, heading up towards Stowe Corner. The more polished, normal racing line might not work here for Ben Casely, but he just edges James Lay that little bit wide on exit, and through goes Ben Casely to pick up the lead of the race. Through the Vale, in towards Club. First and second fighting away. Who's there in third place? Well, it was John McLeod as they came over the start-finish line last time through, but it's not now. It is Hector Hurst that's up into third place in the all-blue car, and John McLeod, with his Dayglow green flashes, drops to fourth. Chris Preen and Jason Rishover, fifth and sixth respectively. And then it is Jacek Jalonka ahead now of Jack Tomerlin, so I think that's been a change for seventh and eighth as well in the background of the shot. The SR1s in the early stages being led by Shane Stoney, who has managed to get a couple of SR3s between himself and the chasing pack. And who's leading the Fangio categories? We have a change for position there as Ben Casely dives at the inside of James Lay, heading through the loop, and takes away the lead of the race. So Casely up into the lead. Down to second goes James Lay. Ben Casely had the fastest lap of the race last time through as well, 2 minutes 22.328. And Hector Hurst, I think, wants in on the fun here as well at the wheel of the all-blue car that sits there in third place. It's just that little bit further adrift. So great fight between the top three. Hector Hurst trying a nice wide line round through Luffield to try and seek out the dry, and then cuts back beautifully on the exit of the corner to draw himself alongside double race winner from this weekend, James Lay. So that was brilliant stuff. I almost thought he was going to lose the nose of the car. He was so close and underneath the gearbox of James Lay's car there, but it was beautifully judged. Is he going to get it done at Copse Corner? Yes, he does. Through goes Hector Hurst to second, and the car that was leading a couple of laps ago in the hands of James Lay is now down into third position, the 8-time race winner so far this season, and remember, new championship leader. Chris Preen side by side with John McLeod. That'll be for fourth position, and that was a change there. I think Chris Preen has gone through at the wheel of the number 3 car. And that's not just for fourth, that's for the lead of the Fangio category as well for the slightly older drivers in the field. So Chris Preen, John McLeod and Jason Rishover are all eligible for that category. And at the moment, they are fighting over 4th, 5th and 6th. They're an all together. So up towards Stowe. James Lay trying to fight back at Hector Hurst. Well, he's trying to, but he's not close enough to do anything. You can see how much more the conditions have deteriorated now. There's ever more spray coming from the coattails of the cars. Now, the pit window is open. All of these cars have passed the pit open board, I think. So I think at the end of this lap, we may well see the first of our pit stoppers. It's whether they decide to come in now, because in reality, the window remains open for 10 minutes. So there's no rush to get in. If you're happy with the conditions and happy with your tyre choice, or happy that you can deal with the tyres that you've chosen, then stick it out there. If you think that maybe you're on the wrong tyre, or in the likes of maybe Jack Tomlin here in the number 60 car, that he's getting held up by cars around, and perhaps dive for the pits and tweak a few things, or maybe even leave the tyres on, but, you know, soften the car up a little bit. A couple of tweaks and clicks on the suspension just to soften up everything, get a little bit more flex in the car, to get a little bit more adhesion and grip out of it, even though you're still on potentially the wrong tyre. So there, going through is a couple of the SR1s. That is Tom Wood fighting away with George Nutten. That'll be for second and third of the SR1s at this stage. Shane Stoney is leading the SR1 category, or was. Is he still hanging on to it now? Might have another change here as Tom Wood has a car diving up the inside of him. I can't see the number of it. It's James Ockenden that's gone through. I can see the coloration of it. So James Ockenden moves up to third then, I think, in that category. He was fourth, but he's now going to be up into the podium paint slots. There goes through the white and red car of Shane Stoney, so you can see the lead he's got between himself and the second, third and fourth place cars in the SR1 category. The number 55 car of James Ockenden, it's white and purple livery, up to third. And Tom Wood in the University of Derby car, who's claimed 5 wins so far this season in the SR1 category, is now down into fourth place and out of the podium spots. So through and over the start-finish line goes George Nutten, James Ockenden, then Tom Wood. Then the next of the SR1s comes through, which is Theo Mercouris, who's working his way through the traffic. So he's slowly picking them off the championship leader at the wheel of the black and the green number 74 car. He's going to be one to watch out for as the race continues to wear on. But for Shane Stoney, he's now managed to get former World Superbike champion Sylvain Guintoli in an SR3 between himself and the next of the SR3s. So the Guintoli black car with the yellow stripe down the centre, the SR3 XXR in the hands of the Frenchman, pushing hard, seeing what he might be able to do. But at the moment, perhaps just struggling with the conditions a little bit, the 41-year-old. Back towards the sharp end again. Jack Tomlin now starting to grab a little bit of pace. He's got himself ahead of the number 14 car of John McLeod there, so that'll be Jack Tomlin now up into 7th position. John McLeod down into 8th and possibly 9th, because he's got the black and the Dayglow orange car of the Scotsman. which is Mark Williams right behind him. So 17 minutes to go. We have got Jose Carvalho into the pit, so one would assume that is for his mandatory pit stop. So he is just on the straight 45 seconds. There's no additional success seconds that needs to be served by Jose, the Portuguese driver that joins us in the Radical Cup UK, supported by Hagerty again this year here at Silverstone. Now, last time through, new fastest lap of the race for Hector Hurst. 2 minutes 19.573 from Hector that time through. So he'll be more than pleased with the way things are going. A few more cars diving for the pit lane this time through, which includes Jacek Jalonka. Jason Rishover is in, Mark Williams is in as well, so those are all cars that are circulating inside the top 8 that all dive for the pit lane this time through. Through goes Andy Lowe. But James Lay, the reigning champion and the championship leader, and so far unbeaten here at Silverstone this weekend, is 1.2 seconds adrift of Hector Hurst, the number 35, who continues to lead the race. Now, James Lay, through the first sector of this lap, has just gone quicker than he's previously gone, which does suggest that if cars in these conditions now are setting fastest lap times that they have done, that they started on the wet tyre and it just wasn't wet enough at the beginning of the race for the tyre to work. Now that conditions have deteriorated, those wet tyres are coming into their own. As I say, that decision would have been made at least maybe 20 to 30 minutes before the start of this race, because that was when the cars would leave their respective garages in the paddock area and head towards the assembly area, ready to be ushered out onto the track when the time was right. So it's a bit of a wet finger in the air to try and work out exactly what you need to do. Of course, many of the teams will have an app that will show what the radar is suggesting is going to happen, but it's not always just a case of looking at an app and it being accurate. Mother Nature often puts a twist in the tail, but I think for these two drivers now, the decision that was taken by themselves in conjunction with the team was the right one. Ashley Gaunt is hot on the heels of one of the SR3s, which I think is the number 88 car of Jacek Jalonka. We've also got one car that has ground to a halt at pit lane entry, which is going to cause a real problem if anyone else wants to come into the pit lane, and it is Sven Thompson who's absolutely ground to a halt at pit lane entry. So anybody that wants to come in now is going to be greeted by a stationary car and a raft of marshals trying to push the stricken car out of harm's way. Let's hope it is not a problem that is going to prevent them even pushing that car. So they're waving the yellow flags at pit lane entry. You won't be able to see it. I can catch it out of my commentary box window, but thankfully it's a wide pit lane at Silverstone and there is just enough room for the other cars to feed their way through. So into the pit lane has come Hector Hurst from the lead of the race. Into the pit lane has come James Lay from second, and into the pit lane came Chris Preen, and they all had to sort of briefly swerve their way through and past that stricken car of Sven Thompson in the pits. So we're now at the stage of the race where some cars have pitted, others haven't. There is the stricken car of Sven Thompson. You could just see the roll hoop of it. The marshals waving the yellow flag. Sven with the crash helmet on, about to get back into the car as they try and shove him out of harm's way. But that is already slightly further up the road than when he first broke down. Let's just have a quick look, see if they can move him out of harm's way. So with all of this going on, I think the number 22 car of Andy Lowe will end up in the lead of the race at this stage because he hasn't pitted. Now remember, James Lay stationary for just 45 seconds. Hector Hurst will be stationary for just 45 seconds, but Ben Casely stationary for 60 because of where he finished last time out in the pit stop race at Alton Park when they were supporting the British Touring Car Championship. There goes Austin Riley, our Canadian visitor, a driver who's been very successful in the Radical Canadian and North American Championships, joining us for the Hagerty Radical Cup UK for this weekend. Now, don't think he has pitted as yet. No, he has not. So he should be second in the race currently. And we've also got James Pinkerton now closing up and trying to work his way through and past Christian Brooks. So this is going to be James Pinkerton and Christian Brooks fighting away for what at this stage of the race is going to be, I think, 4th and 5th of the SR1s, potentially. Because we haven't had, I don't think, many takers in the SR1s as yet. James Ockenden has pitted and is on an out lap in the SR1s. So we'll have to see where he ultimately feeds back out with 12 minutes still of the race to go. Jacek Jalonka at the wheel of the number 88 car has been into the pits. Has he? Yes, he has. And he is now back out there pressing on. He's just completed an out lap. You can see it's getting ever wetter as well from what you can see down at Village and the Loop. We did have blue sky earlier on this morning, but now the whole of Silverstone is carpeted with grey, and the colour difference between the tarmac and the sky, not a great deal, is it, at this stage? Right, cars that were at the sharp ends that hadn't pitted now dive for the pit lane. So Andy Lowe from the lead of the race is in. Austin Riley from second position now comes into the pit lane as well. So those are two cars that have worked their way towards the sharp end. The leading car that has pitted, I think, might well be Chris Preen, you know, potentially. So Chris Preen, who started the weekend having qualified third quickest with a spin at the very first corner and a retirement, had to work his way from the tail end, 21st I think it was, of the SR3 grid for race number 2, up into what was a very strong position, something like 8th. And now, I think by the time we've cycled through this next lap, the number 3 car, which is showing 4th on your screens, may well possibly be up into the lead of the race. We shall have to wait and see. So 10.5 minutes to go, which means that the pit window is only a couple of minutes away from closing. George Nutten, you can see just sliding around as he goes round through Stowe Corner in his efforts to try and keep a good position in the Radical SR1s. But I don't think he's pitted as yet, George Nutten. So he is up to 6th overall, a 30-minute race, 10 minutes to go. So we are 20 minutes in. Window closed 2 minutes ago, as long as he hasn't passed the board. So when the board is held out, you cannot pass it. You have to pit before you pass the board trackside. So if he doesn't pit this lap, for sure he's outside of the window, but it's a knife edge as to whether he's, even if he pits this time, whether he's within the window or not. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Andy Lowe's busy fighting away with Jason Rishover. They've also got another car right behind them as well, which I can't quite pick out. It's the number 77 car, which is Alim Geshev. So that is going to be for positions something like 16th, 17th, 18th at the moment, but they should clamber their way further up through the order as those that are on out laps and have only just concluded their pit stops finish them off and work their way down the pit lane. And it looks as though Jason Rishover there, big dive up the inside of Andy Lowe, and the door is open as they head round through the loop for maybe the car of Alim Geshev to squeeze his way through, but he couldn't quite make it stick. Andy Lowe's runs really wide and onto the very wet curbs heading out of Aintree. Doesn't seem to cause him too much of a problem, but one would expect they'd have to get off the throttle there with still the car having a bit of steering input, a bit of rotation into it. And it did slow his pace, and now Alim Geshev is looking to try and sneak up the inside. There's a bit of contact between the pair of them as they go round through Brooklands. It tips Andy Lowe into a spin. He's on the grass on the outside of the corner. Hopefully the car won't bottom out, and he does finally get going. George Nutten, by the way, has pitted. He has only just come into the pit lane, so we'll let the officials decide as to whether that is inside or outside of the window, subject to when he went over the start-finish line and when the pit window close board was held out. So 8 minutes to go. Chris Preen is the race leader. I did say I thought Chris Preen might be the race leader, so a bit of a topsy-turvy weekend for Chris. Say third in qualifying. First race of the weekend got tipped into a spin and retired instantly at Copse Corner on the first lap, and because fastest lap times from race 1 give us grid for race 2, he started 21st and last on the SR3 field, worked his way up into 8th, and now has worked his way up into the lead of the race, and the number 3 car is leading by there or thereabouts 1 second from James Lay at this stage of the race. And you can see now just how much rooster tail is coming up from the back of Jason Rishover's car as they head down the Hanger Straight on what is now a very wet and soggy Silverstone. Jason Rishover is 11th place, or was at the start of this lap. As for the SR1 leader, or leading the SR1 category, was George Nutten, but he's only just pitted. So if we exclude him for the moment for the fact that he's going to drop back down through the order, it would mean that number 55, James Ockenden, would be leading the Radical SR1 charge. And for James Ockenden, he would be very pleased if he can hang on to that one, because I don't think he's had a win in the category so far this year. No, he's had seconds, he's had thirds, he's had fourths, fifths and sixths. The one he's not had is the top step of the podium in SR1. So here's our race leader, Chris Preen, driving as hard as he possibly can to maintain the lead of the race, but he has got the reigning champion right behind him at this stage. So James Lay is not going to lie down, is he, as they head over the start-finish line. Chris Preen leading the way. In the background of the shot, you could just see the old blue car, which is going to be the car of Hurst, Hector Hurst. And still some good squabbles going on down through the order as well. We can see here James Pinkerton is now right up on the coattails of Michael Williams. A black car with the Dayglow green flash down the centre of it. So that is the double former Radical SR1 champion, James Pinkerton, working away with Mark Williams, and that's a spin. And is that Peter Tyler again? I think it might be, you know, Peter Tyler, who, no, he retired, so it can't be Peter Tyler. Who would that be? Can't see because of the awful conditions that we've got out there. Could be Jack Yang possibly, but again, as the car heads back into shot, no, really can't tell. I think it might be Jack Yang. That is a slim possibility, but I simply couldn't see because of the amount of rain that was falling on the lens of the camera there. 5.5 minutes still to go. Chris Preen leading by half a second, and you can see that as they head out of club and past the wing, that James Lay is on a charge here. He would definitely like to try and scoop up 3 wins out of 3, something that he did at Donington in the first 3 races of the season. He did it at Silverstone when the Hagerty Radical UK Cup was supporting the Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship, and he tries to get as close as he can in towards the braking area for Village this time through. Already 2 wins under his belt. Chris Preen would like to see if he can hang on to this one, because Chris Preen has not had a win so far this season. He's had a second, and that's his only podium visit so far this season. A few fourths, a few fifths and a couple of sixths, but he's not had a win as yet this season. So Chris Preen will be working overtime to try and maintain what is a very slender margin. And if these two start to squabble and hold each other up with 4.5 minutes to go, don't rule out the fact that 5 seconds down the road, Hector Hurst might just be able to close in as well. So out of Luffield, build the speeds again, stay off the curbs as much as you possibly can, and with 4 minutes to go, this will be on to the penultimate lap of the race now for Chris Preen in what is round 15 of the 2023 Hagerty Radical Cup UK. After here at Silverstone, then they get about 6 weeks off before they then go to Donington Park on the 16th and 17th of September for what will be the final race meeting for them this year. So that's where the championship will ultimately be decided, subject to the totting up and the maths at the end of this weekend. So through Maggots, on towards Beckett's. There's still some traffic that will need to be dealt with by Chris Preen this time through. The lap time from Chris Preen was about 0.4 of a second quicker than James Lay last time through. He's flashing his lights to forewarn the traffic that he wants to try and ease his way through and past. Now James Ockenden there looked as though he was pulling out of harm's way, as though he didn't want to get involved in something. And yeah, that car there, I do wonder if James Ockenden might have, James Pinkerton might have a problem, the number 33 car. Now he is an invitation class car, so he's not in for the full championship, so he might just be staying out the way of cars that are squabbling away for championship points. But for a double former champion, you thought he'd roll his sleeves up and slug it out, but his car, I think, may well have a few little small niggles towards the end of this one. SR1 leader James Ockenden is only just in the lead of that one. Look in his mirrors, George Nutten, who stopped very late into the window, and possibly, I don't know, too late into the window. We'll have to wait and see. But these two are, at the moment, on track, fighting it out for the lead of the SR1 category. The white car with the purple flashes is James Ockenden. George Nutten is right behind him. And I don't think we've seen either one of these cars claim a win in the SR1 category. James Ockenden certainly hasn't. George Nutten has had seconds, but he's not also had a win. So these two drivers fighting for their debut win this season in the SR1 category. And they've only got this lap and one more to try and work out as to who's going to win it and who's going to finish in second place. James Ockenden makes a small mistake. You can see the car wiggle round under braking there, and that is just enough to allow George Nutten almost a glimmer of hope to try and work his way through. But Ockenden gathering up the moment and just about hanging on to the lead through the left-hand section of Club, through the right-hand section where James Ockenden is a bit slower coming out of the corner, but he sort of parked it on the apex and continued. So our leader is now on the last lap, Chris Preen. Our SR1 leader, James Ockenden, has got this lap and one more thereafter to see whether he can scoop up his first win of the 2023 Hagerty Radical Cup UK Championship season. But George Nutten is now braking as late as he possibly can, if anything a bit too late there, heading in towards Village. Takes a nice wide sweep through the corner. James Ockenden almost with two wheels on the very wet curb. Just needs to be gentle when you apply the throttle coming out of the loop. And again, James Ockenden is feeling the pressure here. George Nutten gets a really good run coming out of Aintree Corner. He's going to sit in the slipstream and the spray, of course, as they head down the Wellington Straight. So he'll have very little visibility as they head up towards Brooklands. He dives out from behind to take the outside line up towards Brooklands to see if there's a bit more traction on the outside of the corner. James Ockenden runs wide, and is George Nutten going to go through to pick up the lead? Yes, he does. So George Nutten picks up the lead in the SR1 category as they head on to their final lap of the race. Now, he was very late stopping into the window, George Nutten, but the pace he's had behind the wheel of the car has been quite staggering in reality. As for Chris Preen now, he is in the middle sector now of this lap at the wheel of the number 3 car, and is just heading in towards the braking area for Village, with James Lay still sitting there in second position, and it does look as though he may well just come up a little bit short to try and make it 3 out of 3 for the third time this year in a Hagerty Radical Cup UK, because the clock has now ticked to 0 in what are pretty nasty conditions out there now. Chris Preen heads up into the braking area for Brooklands Corner. He's only, what, 2 or 3 corners away now. Still might have John Davis's car to deal with the back mark, but I don't think he'll quite catch him before the line. So Chris Preen turns his way out of the final corner, and it looks as though it's going to be a first win this season for Chris Preen and the Valor Racing team, as he comes over the start-finish line to secure top honours in round 15 of the 2023 Hagerty Radical Cup UK. It's a win for Chris Preen, his first of the season. James Lay finishes in second place, who took up the championship lead earlier on this weekend, and Hector Hurst completes the podium, finishing in third place. Jacek Zielonka should come through to finish in fourth position, but however, he does lose out on that final lap. Ben Casely was able to pick his pocket, so it's Ben Casely that comes through, number 53, into fourth place. Jacek Zielonka's there in fifth place with John McLeod, Hayden Chance, Jack Toblin, Mark Williams, and should be Jason Rishover completing the top 10, but we still need to get Jason Rishover over the start-finish line. And as long as he hasn't made a mistake, there he goes. He was substantively far ahead of Dan Headlam, so he didn't really need to worry about dropping outside of the top 10. How the SR1's getting on? Well, I would imagine, looking at the pace that George Nutten had as he worked his way through and past James Ockenden, he's probably pulled away over the course of the final lap for the lead of the SR1 category. And that number 45 car looks as though, yeah, well, there's James Ockenden. Where is George Nutten? He has disappeared up the road. There he is. I thought he would. Yeah, he's well and truly disappeared up the road, has George Nutten. So he stopped late into the pit window, and as long as he complied with the championship regulations with that pit stop late into the window, he is on course for his first win of the season. He's had 3 seconds. He's not had a win as yet this season in the Radical SR1 Cup section of the Hagerty Radical Cup UK. So George Nutten comes through to finish in 17th position overall, but it's the first of the SR1's home. James Ockenden is 18th and second of the SR1's home, and third of the SR1's home should be the University of Derby entered car of Tom Wood. But on the final lap of the race, he lost out to former champion Shane Stoney, who finished in 19th place and took the place away from him on the charge to the line. Still got a few more cars just to take the checkered flag, and considering how awful those conditions were, we didn't really lose many cars. We lost Peter Tyler, but that was on the formation lap in reality, when his car ground to a halt as it got towards the wing. And then the only other car I think we lost during those tricky conditions was Sven Thompson, and his car ground to a halt as he came in towards the pit lane for whatever reason. It stopped at pit lane entry and just couldn't get going. So for everybody to have dealt with what were enormously changeable conditions, significantly deteriorating conditions, hats off to everybody in the Hagerty Radical Cup UK for what was a good old race, actually. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. I think we've got one more car to take the checkered flag, and that was John Davis, who just about remained on the lead lap in the end. So once he is over the start-finish line, in fact, I think he's come into the pit lane and didn't take the checkered flag, we should be able to give you the results. Chris Preen is the winner, his first of the year, from James Lay in second place and Hector Hurst in third. Ben Casely just jumped to fourth in the end at the expense of Jacek Jalonku, who dropped down into fifth place, and John McLeod was there in sixth. Hayden Chance, Jack Tomalin, Mark Williams and Jason Rishover complete the top 10. Then as we move outside of the top 10, it was Dan Headlam that was there in 11th place. Alan Gushev was there in 12th place, and 13th place went the way of the number 15 car of Emir Faisalim. Then it was Austin Riley ahead of Andy Lowe and Rob Greenwood. And then George Nutten in 17th place was the first of those home in the Radical SR1 Cup, with James Ockenden and Shane Stoney completing that particular podium. Theo Mercuris, who started at the back of the SR1 category, the championship leader, worked his way through to fourth in the end, so not bad championship points for him as he finished in 20th position. And as we move outside of the top 20, we can see there that we've got Brooks, Yang, Wood, Wesley Fongidy, Joyce, Jack Leese, Michael Williams, James Pinkerton, who was slowing down towards the end, so something wasn't quite right there. Darren Nutt and Ashley Gaunt completing the top 30. And then we got a few retirees, just those final two cars. Peter Tyler not even getting a lap in as he retired on the formation lap. And Sven Thompson retiring 7 laps earlier with some sort of problem as he entered the pit lane. So that's it from a very wet and a very soggy Silverstone. We've got a break of 6 weeks now before the championship finales take place at Donington Park on the 16th and 17th of September. So for everybody here at Silverstone, thanks for joining us for round 13, 14 and 15 of the Hagerty Radical Cup UK. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.